Torek Farhadi is a former advisor of the Afghan government, and he joins me now live from Geneva with more on this. Thank you very much for joining us. So, as we just mentioned, the US has not recognized the result, and according to the reports, he has asked Ghani to defer his swearing-in ceremony. What do you make of this, and what does this actually mean?
Well, the United States has been painstakingly working for the last 12 months or a little more to align a lot of moving parts to bring the Taliban perhaps in a peaceful situation inside the government in Kabul. That's up to the Afghans. But the part that really the US is saying it's up to itself and the international community is the signature of a peace agreement with the Taliban, as you said, on the 29th of February, so that the US and the international community could withdraw a majority of their forces. Knowing that it's very expensive for the international community to keep forces in Afghanistan, most of the international community and NATO especially is in agreement with the US that we don't need an extra crisis at this time, and we need to really go towards the signature of the 29th of February peace agreement with the Taliban. Important to that is that the US, after a long time, has been able to bring on board Pakistan. Pakistan's role in what's going on in Afghanistan is well known, but now Pakistan, with its new leadership, has said that it's willing to help peace in Afghanistan. It is also saying that it has brought the Taliban to the negotiating table. So up to 27 countries are invited in Doha on the 29th of February to sign the peace with the Taliban. And frankly, any type of inauguration by anybody before that is an unnecessary distraction. Now, what went unnoticed, and it's very important, is that the OIC, Organization of Islamic Conference, also is aligned with that idea that we should first go to a signature with the Taliban. And we should know that if Saudi Arabia was not on board and if the UAE was not on board, the OIC would not have given that declaration. So this means that most of the international community really sees as a priority the signature of a deal with the Taliban. And later what happens in Afghanistan between the Afghans is a different story. I think at the end of the day, they will agree to some sort of a broad-based government, including elements of the people who have lost the election or won the election, and especially with the Taliban on board.
Well, Torek, looking at this 7-day reduction of violence and Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, calling it a pretty important breakthrough, but on the other hand, we have record number of violence over the past 2 years. So does it really seem realistic that it's a pretty important breakthrough? And what kind of reduction of violence are we talking about here? All fighting or not?
It's very difficult to bring Afghanistan to a total reduction of violence or a ceasefire, because there are Talibans, there are elements of Al-Qaeda, remnants of all kinds of groups and criminality, frankly, that benefits from chaos in Afghanistan. As you know, there is a huge drug trade in Afghanistan, which comprises a large part of Afghanistan's GDP. So a lot of people want to keep the fight on Afghanistan because during the chaos, they can keep making money. So a war has its own machine. It will not come to an end suddenly. But this is a very serious step, unprecedented step. Pakistan on board, other neighbors on board for a signature of peace with Taliban, and Taliban saying that they do not want a monopole of power, but they want to be part of the power structure. Yes, there are lots of questions on what kind of governance mechanisms. There are questions on whether the constitution that's enforced in Afghanistan right now will remain the same, or with the reunion of all the Afghans, including the Taliban, there will be huge discussions on how to change this so everyone is satisfied. Let's not forget that Afghanistan is a very conservative society. There are two speeds in Afghanistan. There is the city speed, the large cities, Kabul, Kandahar, and Mazar-e-Sharif and Nangarhar, and Jalalabad. But then there is the outskirts, the rural areas, where the people are very, very conservative. So the views of all these people have to be taken into account for peace.
Well, Tarek, first of all, do you see them signing this peace deal? And what would it entail? Especially, you just talked about Taliban wanting more power. But how much power do they already have in Afghanistan, and how much more power would that mean?
Well, up to now, they have terrorized Afghans. Let's be clear. This war has been a violent war. It has been a war of 55,000 soldiers died in Afghanistan in the last 5 years. 10,000 civilians died. And you can multiply this figure 2 or 3-fold to get the number of disabled people who Afghanistan will have to take care of. That includes also all the issues of mental health that it ensues after a war like this. This is a difficult situation. The Taliban now have said we are ready to renounce violence, but you have to accept our ideology on how to run the state. So the big debate between the Afghans is in front of us. It's ahead of us. Yes, those Afghans who are in the cities would like to keep the situation as now because there has been a lot of advances in Afghanistan in the last 18 years of involvement of international forces. Also, the world has changed. And with it, a young generation of Afghans are worldly and looking abroad and looking at plurality and the way the affairs of state are run. And the history of what the Taliban had and as example of when they were ruling is not appetizing. So I think conversations are in order to arrive at a new middle of the ground political system that allows the very conservative brand of people like Taliban to be happy with the system, and that allows the majority of the Afghans who have suffered from war and violence and want to safeguard all the advancements of the last 18 years to agree with the system. But it is clear everybody wants peace and a cessation of violence.
Well, Tarek, you have served as an advisor to the Afghan government during Hamid Karzai's presidency. So what would be your advice to Ashraf Ghani throughout this time?
I have served as an advisor to Dr. Ghani as well, up to the time when he stopped listening to others. My advice to him and any leader is listen to the people who are not on your payroll. Listen to the people who challenge your ideas. This is an important time for Afghanistan, and everyone's ideas can contribute to the stabilization of Afghanistan and peace in that region of the world.
Torek Farhadi, thank you very much for joining us here and for that insight.